This is the special, the SVUESD. We have a very targeted agenda for today that begins with public comment. So, Jim, are you able to see if there
Before public comment, I need you to amend, I'm asking to amend the agenda to include authorization that the chair of the board can sign in contracts for the district during the summer months. We do that every year, but we didn't do that. So you got to vote to amend that if you want to do it.
And I'll make that
All
motion.
right. Thank you, Dick.
And
So
I'll
can I have a
second it.
for the motion? Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to amend in the manner described? So hearing none, all those, so Jim, I'm going to ask for your help, please, in counting the votes on this. So all those in favor of amending
we just had
agenda as
Jeff.
described?
Jeff Leake just walked in, so I'll explain to him. They're voting to amend the agenda for authorization for the chair to sign summer contracts.
Okay.
You heard. So, all right, go ahead, and I'll count.
Very good. So Jeff, we have a first and a second on the motion, and I've asked for any discussion on the motion. And so hearing none, all those in favor of amending the agenda as described, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, very good. So the motion passes. So that brings us to the agenda. Jim, is there anyone present in that room or online that you could tell who has like to offer anything for public comments?
I only see district employees and board members present.
Okay. All right, then. So moving on to the next agenda item, I would entertain a motion to, empower the chair to sign contracts during the summer months.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Jayla.
Second.
Thank you. That's the first and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of empowering the board chair to sign contracts in summer months, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. So the motion passes. All right. So Superintendent Culkeen, I will turn the floor over to you and to your directors for a description of the contract negotiations, please.
So our attorney, Dean Atwood, was not able to be present tonight, but Director of HR, Nick Galt, is very well versed in what the settlement was, and he's going to do the presentation. So maybe you should move up to camera.
Would any of you who are here want physical copies? I'm going to share my screen as well.
Okay.
Sure.
Yep.
We'll start with ESP. Jeff. How many folks are here? So that's
Definitely a lot of paper. Thank you.
just going to share my screen so everyone. Jim, can you give?
Laura's gonna make
Can
it.
you give me screen share rights?
Yep. We're practicing. So Nick, you're not in the. You did go in the meeting, so that's right.
I am down there, yeah.
Yeah. There you go. I was making, just for those who didn't know, I was making Nick co-host so he can share his screen. We're still learning all of this.
Alrighty, so what we've tried to do as in years past is provide a bullet list of all changes, additions to the contract, rather than provide full 60-page contracts that you have to review. So this encapsulates every single change that was tentatively agreed to between the board, committee, and the association. So to go from top to bottom, the first item, Appendix A, which we have an attached version of, is the pay schedule. What was negotiated was an increase of step plus 1.5% for each of the 2 years. So I should start by saying it's a 2-year contract. So salary is step plus 1.5% in each of those 2 years. The second item is to replace all instances of paraeducator, or the term paraeducator, with paraprofessional. Under the recognition clause, as this is the first time that we're actually finalizing a contract as opposed to a one-year extension, we want to recognize the SVUESD as opposed to the individual districts, which are still listed in the last full version of the contract. Article 8.6 is to add language reflecting a collaborative committee to discuss issues of staff safety. You will see the same language on the teacher contract proposal as well. And that committee will meet no later than October 1st and present its findings no later than May 1st, 2022. So it's a collaborative committee including employees from the ESP contract and from the teacher contract. Additionally, there will be an addition to 8.7, which that newly employed paraprofessionals shall be provided with documentation regarding de-escalation tips, strategies, and other information, and they will have CPI training as soon as is reasonably available. 11.3 is a small change, states that the superintendent may from time to time change the assignment of an employee, but may not assign the employee to a different employer. Previously it said may not assign the employee to a different employing unit, which led to some confusion, and we felt that employer to provide a distinction between districts as opposed to employing units made for some clarity. 11.6 is modifying existing language to state that a job description will be presented to the association with 10 days for them to consider it, any changes, and that each employee hired will be assigned to a classification group that is specified in Appendix A, which is our practice, and so that codifies that. 11.8, previously paraprofessionals received $1 per hour when they covered for a teacher, $2 per hour when they covered for a teacher. That has been increased to $3 per hour when they cover for a teacher. 11.10 is to modify existing language. It such that any para who covers for an intensive special needs specialist will be paid at that higher rate for the length of the coverage. It's also a practice that we had been doing, but wanted to codify. Also added language regarding the sick bank committee, that it will be administered by a joint committee of association and administrative representation, 50% for each. And this is to administer those sick bank days that can be provided to employees who have exhausted their time. 16.5 essentially allows the assistant superintendent or the assistant director of Southwest Tech, in the absence of the superintendent, to approve leave of absences that may or may not need to go to the board. So oftentimes the superintendent will approve leaves that don't need to be presented to the board. Article 18, most of these changes, the first two, reflect that we have the new statewide health insurance agreement in place. And so there's language in there that was no longer needed, or we were cleaning up language to represent the statewide insurance agreement and essentially just referring to that document rather than having any specific health insurance provisions outlined in our contract. 18.4 is the addition of dental coverage for the ESP contract. This mirrors the offering under the teacher contract, which is that the board will pay 90% of coverage for a single plan, and then that amount can be applied to a two-person or a family plan. So that is the same offering that is made to teachers. And just so you know, for folks to understand that this was accepted as part of a joint package along with the pay increase, such that they were essentially given the option to take a more substantial pay increase or to take the dental coverage in lieu of that, and they chose to go with the dental coverage. 18.6, this is to just provide clarity about how insurance premiums are calculated. Should an employee leave prior to the start of the year, or actually prior to December 1 of the school year, there's actually what is in essence a penalty. They owe the district back for a portion of the employer's cost on the health insurance premium. And that was always understood, but the calculation for doing that was never in their contract. It was in teachers, so we simply took the language from teachers and inserted it into the support staff contract. 19.6 simply clarifies that STEP is only granted in a year in which it's negotiated. It previously said that they receive steps every year, and we know that last year's contract had no steps, so we wanted to make sure that that was clarified. And so that's the purpose of that language. 19.9 was to remove language that said that an employee could continue on their health insurance plan after they've retired, and that is not an option. It may have been in the past, but Blue Cross Blue Shield does not allow that for an employee who has retired. They may receive benefits through the state or through retirement, but they can't do it directly through us. Again, 20.4 is to remove language that would, to be consistent with the health insurance agreement at the state level, the negotiated agreement. And then finally, 20.5 is to clarify that any time an employee covers for a position with a higher pay rate, that they will receive that rate from day one. Previously, they had to actually cover for 5 days before they would receive the higher pay rate. And so 20.5 clarifies that. The other attachment, which I can share on my screen, is the pay schedules. And there's really not a lot to see there other than that it represents what was agreed to, which is a 1.5% increase in each of the years. In each year of the contract. So you'll just have to trust us that math is correct. But each step down the grid increases 1.5% from the prior for all categories. So, any questions from those here or those calling in remotely? Overall, that wage increase represented about a 2.5% increase, and the dental costs we calculated at another 1 to 1.5% depending on enrollment. So, just good information to know. I don't know about if there's a motion needed, Jim.
Yeah, Chris got disconnected. I let him back in. It looks like he's trying to connect. Are you back, Chris?
Well, while we're waiting, I'll move that we approve the bargaining agreement as presented.
And I'll second it.
Chris, I don't know if you heard that. You had a motion to approve and a second. That was Dick France making the motion and Susan Hoag was making the second. I don't know if Richard heard that. It looks like Chris is now frozen.
It's muted.
So, Cindy, do you want to call the question? Call the vote?
Yes, I'll call the vote. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying yes.
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 Aye.
Aye. Is there any abstentions? Okay, looks like they got it.
I will move on and do the
Next
same.
agenda item. Yeah.
Same thing for teachers. So we also have a tentative settlement with our Teachers Association. And I will share my screen here. It's like Chris coming through.
Chris.
Choppy.
Sounds like music.
Yeah. Okay. So sharing and those here, I gave out a physical copy. Okay. So from the top, this is a 3-year contract. It was actually intentional that we did 2 different lengths of contracts, such that the board and the associations will not have to negotiate in the same year again, which can be a lot for board members who may sit on both committees and administrators as well. So a 3-year contract. For the salary proposal, it was 2 things. We have step plus 1.5%, as well as step 21, which was a newly created step last year, was created as a 3/4 step, meaning rather than a teacher moving from step 20 to step 21 and receiving the same amount that a teacher moving from step 19 to 20 or 18 to 19 would receive, they received 3/4 of that amount. So this year, that is now negotiated to a full step. So those teachers moving up to step 21 will receive the equivalent of a full step when they do that. So it's step plus 1.5% plus that 3/4 step. And that total cost comes out to about 3.4% in the first year. It drops off after that because the 21 step full step change is a kind of a 1 year percentage. So 1.5 plus step for years 2 and 3. Another increase under Appendix B is the hourly rate that is used for a lot of different things. It's used for summer school, it's used for some committee work. Anytime essentially we pay a teacher hourly for something outside of their contract, we use this hourly rate. It had been $32.75 for, is that Chris calling in?
Yeah. Hello? Hello? Chris, can you hear us?
There we go.
Yeah.
That hourly rate had been $32.75 for something like 20 years. So the association and the board agreed to increase it over 3 years to $35, $38, and $40. Article 8.14 is the same language you saw on the ESP contract regarding the committee to discuss safety. 10.5 is also the same language you saw in the ESP contract regarding the sick bank. They have individual sick banks. ESP has one, teachers have another. They will have the same joint committee of association and administrative representatives. 23.1 is a change. We used to print physical copies and make them available to every teacher, which was over 300 teachers. We've agreed that the new contract will be posted on the website within 30 days. We'll save a lot of trees. 25.4 is an update to the conference, post-observation conference timeline. I should say the whole observation timeline. This actually just reflects language that was approved by the board previously with the new teacher evaluation, professional growth plan that we'll be implementing next year. And so this timeline is simply reflected from that document. So Chris is trying to enter again.
There you go.
He's there. 26.26 is every year we are required to provide a length of service list or a seniority list as well as a certification list, and we simply changed the timeline on that so it didn't overlap with contract timelines. It made for some just internal difficulties, and so moving that up will hopefully be to everybody's benefit. 29.18 provides that a principal who does not have an assistant principal can have a designated teacher in charge when they leave the building. That was already common practice. This codifies that there is a stipend attached to that in the amount of $1,200 per year for the person who would be that designated teacher in charge. 29.23 and 29.24 is regarding duties, and just clarifies the practice of how teachers are selected for duties, how they're assigned, and that those teachers who work in 2 different buildings on a given day won't have an administrative duty on that day. 29.26 is another committee, a collaborative committee to be formed to review elementary preparatory time or preparation time to determine how, if at all, elementary prep time could be structured differently within the schedules at each elementary school. 29.31F, this is language that was actually solidified through a grievance process outside of contract negotiations, and this is in regards to payment made to teachers at the high school who teach an additional block on top of their regular schedule for a semester, and how that payment is calculated. 29.32 is actually similar, but for the Southwest Tech, they have a different schedule, but a teacher there who agrees to teach an additional block receives a payment for that as well, and so that amount has increased to $3,200. And finally, 30.1B is language intended to clarify, based on a contract settlement from 2017, there are steps on the bachelor's plus 15, and bachelor's plus 30 columns that teachers cannot advance into. Essentially, once they reach step 15 of the current schedule, they have to move to their master's or bachelor's plus 45 in order to advance past step 15. And so this language is intended to clarify what that step is now, as the numbers have changed over the years, and so we're just trying to make it more clear for employees when they will be impacted by that change. And the document, the additional document that was sent out is the salary schedules themselves, which I will share briefly. And these just represent the 1.5% plus step as well as a renumbering of steps. We had previously started our step count at 3, and then it started at 4, and now it started at 5 as we were eliminating what were the entry-level steps. The association asked that we renumber those steps starting at step 1, so we've done that.
Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I've been hearing you.
Okay, all right. So
I think that's everything I
Nick
have
has
for
done his
teachers.
presentation if you want to call
Yep.
for any questions.
Yep, so just as Superintendent Culkeen just outlined, are there any questions or requests for clarification of Nick?
I have one question. I do believe that most of the buildings now have an assistant principal, so we probably wouldn't be using the teachers. Is that correct?
Now that Pownell and Shaftesbury have a joint, a shared assistant principal, Monument Elementary would be the one left without one. So that would be the one potential building that could utilize that.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Where does
So,
Woodford fit into?
Director Galt,
Yes.
Cindy's
Which one?
question, because those two schools are sharing an assistant principal, what is the protocol for when the principal needs to leave, but the assistant principal is at the other school?
Very good
Is
question.
there-
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't rule out that Shaftesbury and Pownell, we may not have to do some type of a negotiated designee on that, on those two schools too.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Director Galt? Okay, in that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the contract as outlined.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion on this at all? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the contract as described, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Director Galt, I do have a few questions, and I'm not quite sure what the connection issue was. I'm standing still, so I'm not sure why I got dropped, but getting back to the para contract, I guess this is just for my own edification at this point. Two questions. First, is there functional or a legal difference between a para educator and a paraprofessional?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge, other than, no, not to my knowledge. I think it's terminology that we've been using, paraprofessional, for a number of years. And you'll still hear people say paraeducator. But
Sure.
that's the official job title. That's what's on the job description.
I tend to use the term support staff because,
Right?
you know, some people do find the term para somewhat a little demeaning, that it's, you know, like
Sure.
less than something, so.
You're only kind of professional? Sure,
Right.
I can see that. Yeah, okay. And then just how frequently is the CPI training made available to staff?
Do you want to answer that one?
So there are trainings offered every year, and Dr. Abbott would schedule them based on need.
So, so it's available at least once a year and potentially
Correct.
more than once?
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
okay,
Yes,
all right.
Just finished the training last week.
correct.
I don't know if you heard it, we just finished a training last week too, so. We're losing.
We lost Chris.
So we have one more agenda item and we got 6 minutes before the next meeting starts. So Cindy, until Chris comes back, you're in charge again.
All right, so we have one more. Chris is gonna tell us the next one. Nick.
Okay, so yes. She calls me Chris. I forget that.
That's right.
I haven't seen you in so long, Cindy.
I know.
So the last item would be for our non-union wage increases. So we, as a practice, wait until both contracts have been settled before recommending a non-union wage increase. What we would be proposing this year is a 3% increase for all non-union employees. We feel that falls consistently, but roughly between where we have our ESP and our teacher negotiations. Settlements, ESP settled at 2.5% overall, plus the dental, which they elected to do. Teachers settled at about 3.4%. Our administrator's contract receives a base increase of 2.5% plus step on alternating years, so that works out to roughly 3%. We also looked at trends for what anticipated wage increases would be for 2021. We looked at sources like Willis Towers Watson and things like that. And after a dip in 2020, which we all anticipated, and the 1% and 2% increases, it looks like trends are going back up to the 2.5% to 3% range. And so, hence our recommendation for a 3% increase for non-union staff.
Okay, so we can actually vote on this.
Yes.
All right, we need a motion
Move to
to accept
accept.
it.
Got a motion by Dick France to move it. I don't know if you have a second. Yeah.
A second?
I'll second.
Jeff Leake seconded.
Okay, Jess. All right, is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the whatever they called it again,
Non-union personnel.
non-union personnel, please signify by saying yes or raising your hand.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, is there anybody against it? No. Any abstentions? It's passed.
Is that you, Chris?
Good job.
Hi, Jim, thank you.
Okay. All right, we passed that. There's no other agenda items, but you could entertain a motion to adjourn. Say that again, Chris?
Well, move to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
All right, motion been made and seconded. All right, thank you, guys.